Chris asked me to address the 2019 resolutions coming out of the special town meeting on the landfill. At that town meeting, there was a petition for closure of the landfill. There was also a set of board resolutions that were voted, and the town meeting substantially voted down the petition to close the landfill and voted in support of these resolutions. But the resolutions provide direction. They indicate, first of all, that it would be helpful for the town manager and the town's advisors as to the landfill be directed to develop an environmentally compliant and cost-effective plan for use of the town's landfill capacity to serve the needs of its residents, including businesses and industries, as well as current and future permitted waste streams served by the town's secure landfill facility. As we know, there's two landfills, an unsecured, basically attenuation landfill that was operated historically, that's since been closed, and there's now a secure line landfill. So this part of the resolution related to that. The first resolution was that the town complete the final design, develop and utilize the long-term capacity of the Pleasant Street secure landfill. The third component was that the town manager and the town's advisors as to the landfill develop a formal and compliant plan for the closure of the landfill, where the plan would be implemented once the 20-year useful life of the secure landfill is exhausted. Fourth, that the town manager and the town's advisors as to the landfill prepare a funding plan, and this begins to implicate the budget committee. I'll have Dan Pittman in a moment speak to the municipal finance referendum that's associated with two warrant articles, one on these resolutions and the second on the municipal finance referendum. Next, that the town manager and the town's advisors have the additional landfill capacity plan, closure plan, and the funding plan ready for the review and action by a following town meeting or special meeting to be called by the Board of Selectmen once the town manager reports that these specific plans are ready for review and approval by the town. As you'll hear from Amanda Wade and Chris Littlefield tonight, it took some time to get through the relicensure process at DEP. Then there was an appeal up to the Board of Environmental Protection, and there's been a with the Superior Court in Somerset County. That will not impede further efforts. It's an effort to appeal a very strong Board of Appeals decision that I don't think will have much life beyond a motion to dismiss that will get filed. What I'd like to do is turn to Dan Pittman and ask Dan to review, given that we had this set of directions coming out of the 2019 town meeting that the town manager and the Board of Selectmen take very seriously, because it was an adopted set of guides that were to be brought back to town meeting because of the tannery closure and because of COVID. Certain priorities had to be addressed first. So we're back to the point where we now need to move forward with the ability to get action on warrant articles. I'll review the first warrant article after I have Dan briefly address what a municipal finance referendum article looks like. And then we'll make sure we review the two that have been unanimously adopted by the Board of Selectmen, both as to form of article and as to recommended passage of the articles. But Dan, if you'd speak to what's the purpose of a municipal finance referendum.
Sure, thanks, Andy. Can everyone hear me okay? Hearing no complaints. Under Maine law, in order for a town to authorize borrowing, generally the approval of the town is required. And Maine law sets out specific statutory requirements for what has to be included in a borrowing article, an article authorizing borrowing. So in this case, it has to specify the maximum amount that will be borrowed. It has to contain a description of what the borrowing will be used for. It has to have some language about the form that the bond will ultimately take. And then it has to include some financial data. I'll talk about the financial data in a second. The warrant article that we're working on authorizes the treasurer and the Board of Selectmen on behalf of the town to borrow an amount not to exceed $3,533,000 to be used to finance the construction of the remaining permitted capacity at the municipal landfill, and to issue a general obligation bond of the town. A general obligation of the bond is a bond that's secured by the full faith and credit of Hartland. It has a maximum term of 30 years in this case, and it authorizes the bond to be sold to the United States Department of Agriculture's Rural Development Service, which is obviously a division of the federal government that does a lot of loans for this sort of purpose. Rural development, in addition to the fact that they're terrific, and you've worked with them, I know, in the water plant, but they have very low interest rates, much lower than interest rates you'd get if you just went to a local bank or anything like that. Can't set the interest rates. We can't finalize the interest rate until we're ready to close on the bond. But if you closed today, it would be something like 1.75%. We included an estimate, which I'll talk about in a second. That's a bit higher, just to be conservative. Again, that's a below market rate loan, because it's subsidized by the federal government as an economic development and rural utility priority of the federal government. The state also requires that there be some financial information that's submitted to the town at the same time that it adopts the vote. They ask for a statement of the town's entire debt currently outstanding, as well as debt of the town that's authorized to be taken on but is not yet outstanding. And then you have to add that to the amount that you're proposing to borrow with the warrant article in particular, for a total amount of debt that would be authorized after the issuance of the bond. In this case, Hartland's in a slightly odd position for making that calculation right now, because you have gotten a bond anticipation note from the Maine Municipal Bond Bank for the water treatment facility that will come with forgiveness. There's going to be $1.6 million worth of forgiveness when you take that final, but so far that loan is still, we're still in the preliminary stages. You haven't actually drawn that money, so the bond bank can't forgive it until you've actually drawn it. So the total amount that would be authorized after the passage of this article would be just north of 7.7 million, well, just about $7.8 million. Of that, $1.6 million will be forgiven once the bond bank bond closes. So that would take your total debt after forgiveness, including the amount, if the voters approve this warrant article, to about $6.1 million. The state law also requires that we include estimated costs of the bond. As I said, we're including a conservative estimated interest rate of 2.25%. That's a little bit higher than what you get if you close the bond today, but you won't close the bond today, so better to be on the safe side. We're required to show the estimated term, which is 30 years, as I said. The total amount of principal that has to be repaid, that's just the $3.533 million that you'd be borrowing. The maximum interest that would be paid over that term, based on the interest rate that we estimate, that comes out to $1,328,712 in interest, for a total cost of principal and interest of $4,861,712. And the final statutory requirement is that the treasurer sign a statement saying that this is an estimate, and the voters' ratification of it is conclusive, even if it turns out that some of the information used in the estimates is not correct. So that's the form of the warrant article. That's what it covers, and I think that that's what the town will have to vote on eventually if it does want to approve this borrowing. I'll turn it back over to Andy unless anyone has any questions about that.
Thanks, Dan. So I'm going to just walk quickly. Oh, go ahead, Chris. Somebody did have a question?
The chair has a question.
Dan didn't tell us exactly who he was, who he worked for, and what he was
Sorry.
doing.
So,
do that for us?
Yeah,
Sure. Sorry about that. Yeah, my name is Dan Pittman. I'm a colleague of Andy Hamilton's at Eaton Peabody. My specialty is municipal finance, so I do tax-exempt bonds for municipalities. I've worked with Hartland on a couple of bond issues to date. I also have a background in tax law, but I'm here in my capacity as a bond lawyer.
Perfect.
And Andy Hamilton, I serve as town attorney, which I've served for many, many years for the town of Hartland. And I also work at Eaton Peabody. I'm going to just close out our introductory section of this by saying the 2019 resolutions that were first proposed by the select board, Hadley, John, and Judy, were intended to give a future leaning plan towards operation of the landfill. It suggested the balance was not immediate closure, but to have an addition, an increased capacity plan to essentially deal with the last residual cell of the landfill to be developed. It took a while to get through relicensure. That was concluded early summer. By the time the Board of Environmental Protection ruled on the appeal of relicensure, we're into October. Again, this harkens back, however, to the 2019 town meeting votes, where closure was petitioned for by a group of residents. That was voted down, and the board resolutions were substantially voted in. Those resolutions address three elements: additional capacity for the landfill, number one; number two, long-term closure plan; number three, funding plan to address the additional capacity plan. I believe it's important for the budget committee to get information, but you should appreciate that there's only 3 articles on a warrant that has been approved as to form and has become the recommended vote of the Board of Selectmen to pass the articles. It'd be necessary to have the budget committee's recommendation on the articles so that those can issue timely, so that Freeman Ramsdell, a resident of the town, can call the warrant, post the warrant, and issue it for Tuesday, April 6, 2021, for a vote by secret ballot, so that both those who are not present in the town of Hartland on the 6th, but are qualified legal voters to vote by absentee ballot, and then voters present in Hartland can vote by secret ballot by submitting their ballots between the hours of 10 o'clock and 7 o'clock p.m. And that vote will be held in person at the Irving Tanning Community Center. To operate on over those hours is very protective from a COVID perspective, because we don't need to have large groups gathered. The first article will be to elect a moderator. The second article will be the first article voted by secret ballot. Dan's already articulated the second substantial article to be voted by secret ballot, and that's the municipal finance referendum. The first article is to see if the town will vote to approve, again, springing out of the 2019 approved resolutions, to approve expanding the capacity of the municipal landfill by approving first the landfill capacity plan, second the closure plan procedures, and third the financing plan, and then to authorize and direct the town manager, the treasurer, the Board of Selectmen, and the other municipal officers to take such actions as they deem proper in connection with carrying out the purposes of Article 2. So I just wanted to emphasize 2 things. One is the 2019 vote of town meeting set the course for this 2021 April 6th town meeting vote by secret ballot. Secret ballot allows people to cast their ballot in a way where not everyone's watching. They don't have to worry about what their neighbors think. They can just cast their ballot freely, independently, in a way that's always provided for in Maine elections, but particularly in Hartland elections. Second, they can vote by absentee. So we can make sure that those absentee ballots are available to voters who are not present in Hartland, but are legal voters of the town of Hartland. So I think that's enough on background. I think it's appropriate to turn it over to the town manager and to Amanda Wade to walk through informational presentations so that you'll have the basis to then cast your vote on whether to recommend passage of the two warrant articles, Articles 2 and 3. Again, Article 1 being to elect a moderator. Back to you, Chris.
Okay, so
Very hot.
we invited you guys here tonight because we need a vote, but we also want to give you the opportunity to see this information. We're going to be out there. You have to take a vote on it. We feel like you should be informed before you take the vote. So we're going to start out here. Obviously, we're going to be talking about the Hartland Secure Landfill.
What exactly are we going to be voting on so we can be thinking about it while we're watching this video?
That's a good question. So we're actually voting on what Andy and Dan just talked about. The warrant articles, in fact, let me just review them real quick. I'll read the actual warrant article. To see if the town will vote to approve expanding the capacity.
Can we wait for him?
Yeah,
He stepped out.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
He got by me.
He did.
That's a great question. Thank you.
You're welcome. I like to know ahead of time so I can be thinking when
Right.
I'm watching.
Well, Andy went over the major points.
Yeah.
The point is the landfill capacity plan, the closure plan, and the financing plan. So I'll read the actual warrant article. It's to see if the town will vote to approve expanding the capacity of the municipal landfill by approving the landfill capacity plan as it may be amended from time to time to reflect market conditions and Maine DEP rules, the closure plan procedures as it may be updated from time to time in accordance with Maine DEP rules, and the financing plan as it may be updated from time to time in accordance with Hartland Town Meeting votes, and to authorize the town manager, the treasurer, the board of selectmen, and other municipal officials to take such actions as they deem proper in connection with carrying out the purposes of this article. So that's the first article. And that is the same information that Andy just spoke to. The second article, which is actually Article 3, to see if the town will vote to authorize the treasurer and the board of selectmen in the name of and on behalf of the town to borrow an amount not to exceed $3,533,000, the proceeds to be appropriated to finance the construction of the remaining permitted capacity at the Hartland Municipal Landfill as described in Article 2, and to issue the town's general obligation bond and a note in anticipation thereof for a combined term of not to exceed 30 years to the United States Department of Agriculture, acting through its Rural Utilities Service or such other lender as the treasurer and board of selectmen may select, and under such other terms and conditions, including provisions for early redemption or prepayment, as may be approved by the treasurer, and to further authorize the treasurer and a majority of the board of selectmen separately to take any and all other actions and to sign such other documents and certificates as may be necessary or convenient to accomplish such borrowing and to authorize such other actions as the town meeting may approve. Okay, so those are the two articles. As we go through this presentation, we're going to be speaking to the process that we intend to follow. We've tried to lay out the plan as the public asked, and we've tried to answer your questions. We anticipate there will be questions at the end, and we're happy to go forward with the questions. We'll do questions from the Budget Committee tonight. When we do the public meeting tomorrow night, we are going to, we didn't make accommodations for this today. We are going to create a website so people can do a written request. The They also will put the mailing address also, so if somebody doesn't have email, they can write in and send us a letter, and so that people have an opportunity to do written communication with us on what their concerns and questions are. Okay, so we're going to do a very aggressive schedule on presenting this to the public over the next several weeks. So we prepare for the meeting on April 6th. So our idea, because of COVID, instead of trying to set up the gymnasium over to the school like we always have in the past, and trying to squeeze 20 in this room and 10 in here, and we just said, okay, we have enough time, we'll do a sign-up sheet and let groups of 45, 46, depending on how many people we have coming physically that night. The selectmen obviously will be present, I will be present, so we'll be in that 44, 45, 46 range, and we'll just keep doing signups so people can come and see the presentation, or they can Zoom. We're going to do a Zoom meeting every single time. So that will get the information out there. The other thing that Amanda and I are going to collaborate on is trying to get this videotaped in a format where we can put it on YouTube, so that we can put a link on, we'll put a link in the presentation, we'll put a link on the town's website, and then people can go to that and watch it at their leisure. Doesn't necessarily have to be on our schedule. So that, from you guys' perspective, does that sound like we're headed in the right direction?
For the people
Okay.
that don't have internet, are they gonna be allowed to call the town office to set up a time to go for a meeting?
Yes, we're gonna put,
And that will be put in Rolling Thunder or posted around town?
yeah, we're gonna put the phone number on. We'll put the phone number as well, so they can call here and sign up on a list.
Perfect,
It's
okay.
gonna be first come, first serve. And, you know, we're not, because this is informational only, we're not gonna let somebody come 5 times.
Right.
We're gonna, you get one chance to come. If you have questions, you still can send questions in. So, yeah.
So at these meetings, I guess what I'm hearing is at these meetings, they're not gonna be taking questions. Questions will be written in. Am I correct on saying that?
I would say that we may take questions from the public.
Okay.
But we're probably not gonna address them in detail until we have an opportunity to do that. I mean, if it's a quick answer, yes. If not, the night of the public hearing, we will take all the questions, and we intend to review as much of the data as we can, and we'll be all inclusive and provide some feedback back to the public at the public hearing prior to the vote.
Okay.
So that is the intent. We're trying to be, this is a huge decision for the town, and you're gonna see that as we go through the process. We know there's a lot of controversy over it. So we want to get as many facts out there as we possibly can,
Great.
and present as much data as possible. So, okay, so we've done our introductions here. Again, real quick, Amanda Wade from TRC. We have Andy Hamilton, Dan Pittman from Eaton Peabody. The three of them have had a great deal of input into this presentation. The selectmen have provided feedback to us. This has been a real team effort, and we have still been tweaking it. I think every time we look at it, we see something else we want to make better, and that may happen 1 or 2 more times, but there'll be a point very soon where it's the same over and over, because that's what's fair to the public, because everybody gets the same thing. We'll try to have the details worked out of that tomorrow, and really at this point, it's about an email address, telephone number, and postal address for questions. That's really the only thing missing at this point that we'd like to add. So why are we here? Okay, in June of 2019, we did a public meeting, and it was driven off the petition, and we had two options presented to us. Option A was to immediately close the landfill, and the public vote on that got rejected 42 yes, 108 no. So the immediate closure was, that concept was by the public denied, okay? Option B was to move forward with construction and the additional capacity of the landfill and with solid plans and a program or process, if you will, to move us forward. That vote was 128 yes, 25 no. What we're here to do tonight is to provide our plan on what our intentions are and where we intend to go, assuming the public supports it, okay? Option A on this presentation is a vote to close the current cells without construction of any future capacity, okay? In my opinion, that would be a mistake, okay? There's a cost of $3,469,809. Again, that's an estimate. If we were to shut down immediately, we are going to cut off our revenue stream and we are going to guarantee ourselves taxation, okay? So that is option A.
Can we ask a question now, or do you prefer us to wait?
No, you can ask a question.
Okay, so can we go back to the last slide? So out of that 3,469,000, how, you said revenue, how much revenue do we have from the stuff that we've already taken up there that would go against that 3 million? 3.5.
How much do we have in reserve,
Yes.
is your question?
Yes.
I apologize, I don't have that exact figure, but it's around 377,000.
Okay.
I think it's 350, 377. I don't know exactly, but I'll make sure I write that down. That's a great question. I want to have that available. We provided it in a public meeting not long ago. I just don't remember the details.
Okay.
So, okay.
That would still leave us 2.9.
Well, no, he's got 377. He's gonna leave us.
Yeah, it's still got 3 million.
3.1, yeah.
Chris, there's just one thing I don't understand. If the public voted not to do option A,
Yep.
why are we talking about option A at this point?
Well,
I mean, the vote was
voted on it,
not to
yes.
do it. It was an overwhelming vote. So I don't know why we're not just focused on option B. And I mean, option A.
that's an
isn't option
interesting
B.
point. And
Are we putting it up to vote again?
yes.
Kind of have to, because if we don't vote to take the loan out for the 3.5 million, then we have to close it.
Right, so, yeah, it is coming up to vote again, Rusty. It will be a situation where we've provided a plan. We were asked to provide the plan and provide the details and the financing. So really, we are gonna do a yes or no vote. And so it is, we do have two options. One is to close as soon as we reach capacity, which is going to be, it will be very close to the end of mid to late summer. She can speak to that in a little more detail, but the fact of the matter is the capacity is going to be used up fairly quickly. The last survey we had done showed 22,000 cubic yards of capacity left, which is about a year's worth of, that was done in last October. So we've been running right in that range for volume. I apologize, I'm gonna have to take sips of water often, but we potentially will be out of space by October. So, okay. So I like your question though, I like your thought process. Option B is a vote to move forward. The cost is $3,533,000. So you see from a financial standpoint, the numbers are very close, okay? The $3,533,000 option covers the construction cost of a of a secure lined landfill that provides leak protection and is in fact extremely safe for the environment. It is a state-of-the-art system. The drainage will go into our lagoon system and our pump station at the landfill. It gets piped all the way to the treatment plant. The water gets treated, the solids come out, the solids go back to the landfill, and then the water goes to the river. So that process we're doing over and over and over. And when we do this new construction, or if we do, I guess is a better way to say it, when we do this construction, you're going to see through this presentation that it's a much better option for the town. Option A guarantees taxation. Option B gives us a little chance to maybe not have any whatsoever, but it certainly will minimize it. Okay, so $3,533,000 is buying the construction for the complete system on 5.3 acres. We have put in the purchase of a slow-speed shredder. We've done a great deal of homework and studied working with a shredder, and the shredder will gain us capacity in a very, very huge way. We run about a 42% capacity rate as a general rule. We think that we can gain that. My projections are on 56%, but I think we can get 60 to 70% based on our studies. We consistently hit 60%, but I did my projections on 56% because I wanted to be conservative, okay? Final note is we want to put in our own set of scales. We've had a great opportunity over here with the lumberyard. They've let us, we pay $2,500 a year to use their scales. However, they're often off. They're not necessarily on zero every time a truck goes over it. And we just feel that there is some huge opportunity in having the scales at our site. And we are talking to the Hollis and Seth Edwards about putting the scales on their property. They have not got back to me on leasing it. We'd like to lease a spot right beside the driveway as you go up in the landfill. As time goes on, if we develop this, we will be going right or left at different times. If we try to get this set of scales on our property up there, it's going to cause a turnaround of a trailer truck, no matter how you go about it. So we're hoping we can work out something with them that's reasonable, and that gives us an opportunity to really put a scale house up there and really have an efficient state-of-the-art setup. The construction liner, again, it says state-of-the-art environmental protection. As the projections that we have are showing sufficient capacity to repay the construction costs and also fund our operation costs, our closure costs, and our post-closure costs. And again, the projections we're showing show that it's paid for 100% by the landfill user fees, not the taxpayers. Why are we here? We're here tonight to review this board of resolution and review what the town meeting in 2019 directed us to do. We're here to come back with a plan and present that plan. So we're looking for the final design of phase 4. We're looking at our plan for the use of the landfill capacity. We're going to be talk about the closure of the landfill. And finally, we're going to talk about how we're going to fund this additional capacity.
So Chris asked me to talk about this slide, and can everybody online hear me? Because my audio. If I turn it on, it echoes with Chris's. So can you hear me on Chris's mic? Perfect. So we wanted to bring up some of the, I mean, this is a big decision for the town. So we did want to talk about some of the historic issues at the landfill, just so that you have those in your mind as you make your decision moving forward. There have been some historic groundwater contamination on site. But the important piece to remember here is that there are two separate landfills on that property. One landfill that was built in the 70s without a liner system that was closed in 1990. And the new landfill, the current landfill that you're operating in, that was permitted in 1986 and built in 1988, is a lined facility that collects leachate. That's the landfill we're talking about. So the historic contamination was identified in the mid 80s, came from the old waste that doesn't have a liner system. There, as you all know, there was installation of public water supply on Route 23. That was preemptive. There actually was not contamination found in the drinking water wells along that route. And as you see by the timeline, the water wells were put in before waste was put into that landfill we're talking about today.
I'd like to just add one comment on
Please.
that when Amanda says there wasn't contamination there, that information is coming off a report that is dated 1991. The only one that's referenced that did have a slight increase, and I can't remember on what the chemical was the Stedmans. And it notes that the Stedmans still use their water to plant for watering the lawn, watering the garden, things like that. And she pointed out it was a preemptive situation. We have 2 water tests that were done by the DEP, the Berries and Linwood Violets. Those water tests show that that drinking water is good. It meets the state of Maine standards for drinking water. That was done a year or so ago. I intend to have that documentation available for people to look at, so you can look at it yourself, put your hands on it and read it. Sorry, Amanda.
Nope, that was perfect. So there have also been some historic notices of violation from the Maine DEP for that site. As you are all aware, the site was operated differently in the past, and it didn't receive as much attention as it has been getting recently. And so there were some historic issues that took a while for the town to address. And so that lack of address was cause for DEP to issue notices of violation. The last one was received in 2009. So since that time, many of the issues or all of the issues have been addressed at the site, which ultimately led to relicensure. So you've been working for the last 12 years to get to the point where you have a facility now that is 100% in compliance with DEP regulation and able to move forward. There was some historic waste instability. I know you all know that there was a slide at the landfill. That slide happened within the lined landfill. It was wet wastes that were improperly handled, and Chris and I have talked about that. You guys have changed your procedures for placing wastes now, but nothing got outside of that liner system. The slide happened within, all of the leachate was contained, and so there was no additional contamination that happened because of that. Since that time, all of that waste has been relocated and mixed and is now a stable mass, and there are no signs of movement at all on the site. Some of the issues that certainly you'll want to think about moving forward is ongoing traffic. You may see an increase in traffic slightly over what you're seeing, although it'll be close to what you're seeing today, but certainly from before you started taking additional waste streams. However, it's not going to be any greater than what that road saw when the annex was in operation. So that's just something to keep in mind, that you've always had truck traffic coming in and out of that facility. Potential noise, as Chris mentioned, one of the things that you're looking at getting for that facility is a grinder. It's in operation now, and many people, we did a study and actually stood next to it with the noise meter because we wanted to make sure. It was very minor levels near it, and when we got up onto the access road, it was non-detect by the noise meter we had. So it's not something you're going to hear off-site, but it is one of those things that just to be aware of. And then certainly backup alarms, truck gates, those things that have always been in operation, those will continue. Potential dust, certainly demolition debris from time to time when it comes into the site does have dust with it, especially as it's dumped. Chris has some procedures for, watering it during times of the year when you can do so. Right now you can't, obviously. The access roads into and out of the facility need to be monitored for dust as well. They are gravel roads, and this is Maine, so as you all know, we have dusty roads sometimes. Again, in his operations manual, there are things that would ask him to water those roads when appropriate. Now is not appropriate.
Just water?
Just water, nothing else. Because of groundwater monitoring and on that site, nothing goes on the ground other than clean water. And then odors, right? We've all been dealing with the odors here for quite some time. The wastes that Chris is taking at the landfill now, they're all non-putrescible, which means they don't break down and cause an odor like your trash would, your household trash. Sludge, however, does have an odor that comes along with it. There are protocols that they follow now to make sure that sludge is compacted and mixed and covered within 2 hours of it going out to the site. So that minimizes odors. He has spray systems that he can activate in the summer months, obviously, because they would freeze in the winter. He can apply lime to the waste. So there's numerous things that he's been investigating since we started to help address odors. But we did think it was important to bring up that while the plan to move forward looks great financially, that these are the other things that certainly the residents would want to understand.
So has all that been figured in the cost?
All of this has been figured in the cost, yes. Yep. So the progress that's been made since the resolution, we were asked to do a lot of planning. So since that time, the town did receive the final relicense for the secure landfill. And that was actually pending a 29-year relicense period. It was a very long time. We completed an assessment of groundwater flow directions under the landfill. We wanted to guarantee that we understood what upgradient and downgradient actually was at the landfill to know that where we should be monitoring for future developments so that we could just be aware of everything. Based on that, we installed 4 new groundwater monitoring wells. Those were all installed down gradient of the proposed landfill cell so that we will have baseline conditions before we start putting waste in the landfill.
So is that in between the cell and the leachate pond?
Yes. There were 4 that were installed. 1 was installed furthest to the east, actually just as the road bends down around the corner. And then we installed 2 in the woods, just on the opposite side of the access road as you're heading down to the leachate pond. And then 1 just to the west of the leachate pond in that little wooded area.
Oh, so there's already some there, correct?
And
Yes.
there are 9 existing locations we're already monitoring on that site, yes. We have prepared the engineering design for phase 4, so it is 95% ready to be submitted to the DEP if you get approval so that you can get permits to move forward. Chris performed a compaction analysis utilizing a grinder to just see how much capacity he could gain in utilizing one. He's done a study with 3 different grinders at this point to see which one is best and most efficient on site. We performed an assessment of landfill capacity utilization. Again, that was utilizing those grinders and his compactor to really identify what he can get for compaction rate. And then we scheduled odor monitoring training for town employees and any responders. This was actually in response to the appeal that was filed of the relicensure. The town voluntarily stepped up to the plate and said that they would institute odor monitoring that is required of other facilities. It's not a requirement of landfills, but it gives them a means of monitoring odor with a quantitative number. So they can actually smell the odor in the air, smell the odor in a set of jars, and put a number to what they're smelling as for an intensity. We actually just completed that training today. So his staff is now trained in that and can respond to odors and actually get a measurement when they go out there, strictly so that they then know how to respond if they do see things that are concerning.
So who's going to be doing the monitoring? Who took the class today?
So that's a good question. I was in the class today. Mark took the class today. Mark Ramsdell took the class. Dylan, Russ, Dalton Plant, and Jake Butler. So interestingly enough, there's a scale and you have to go through this process to score. I didn't score well enough to be able to be a guide or actually provide an opinion okay? And what that means is I don't smell well. I didn't pick it up on the scale that they were working on. So I got kicked out of that. Mark Ramsdell did not score high enough to do it. So we ended up really with Mark Brooks, Dylan, Dalton, and Jake. They fit Dalton scored the best out of the town employees.
And then we
So-
have the two of us from TRC also took that training and made sure that we were sensitive enough to meet the qualifications. So it really is a process to be approved to do this.
Correct. So is it gonna be checked every time there's a complaint? Is that what the intent is? Or a complaint, or checked every time one of the workers smells something?
Well, we're gonna create a protocol. There's a questionnaire. There is a process that you need to follow, and we talked about that today. We don't have that developed right today.
Do you want me
But-
to talk a little?
Yeah,
bit about
would
it?
you talk
Yeah.
about that?
So the plan is written, it's been submitted to DEP. They had a couple questions, so we've been addressing those. But generally speaking, if a complaint is received during operating hours, the goal is to get and they request a responder come to their home or come to their address to check for odor. The responder should try to get there within 30 minutes, check the weather station to see if the wind direction is in the right direction. And then they're to go to the site with this kit so that they can do the odor readings. If it's outside of those hours, nobody's here to respond to that. So unfortunately, that won't be addressed. But if there's somebody here and it is requested that they come to their home, then somebody should try to get there within a half an hour. Odor's fleeting, as we know, so it does shift around. But that's the plan. The plan is to verify those odor complaints so that then they can track it back to the landfill and figure out if there's something they can do to address it and reduce the risk of it happening again. So hopefully over time, we'll find if there are concerns that they can address and they'll fix them.
So,
So you're not doing this with a machine, you're just doing this by people smelling.
right, right.
Which is why the people we had to all be tested to make sure that we had that capacity, that sensitivity fell within the right range, because we didn't want somebody who, had a hard time noticing an odor, trying to find an odor. And at the same time, you don't want somebody who's, hypersensitive to be the one to respond to an odor complaint.
So eight is an average score, okay? And we had the four guys that qualified range from 5 to 8, wasn't it? Was it 8.6?
Mhm, mhm.
I was a 3, and I think Mark ended up being a 0. So they do it with your eyes closed, so you can't see what's being put in front of your face. It's quite interesting, really. And I told them when I started, I struggle smelling as a general rule. And when we got all done, she said, "You're right. You're not sensitive enough to be able to do it." So my olfactory system is not what everybody else's is.
And from the training too, we did have additional information that we're going to get to the public so that when they do call or email in with an odor complaint, they have some terms that they can use to help identify the odor a little better, to really characterize it for us, because that's going to help us figure out where it's coming from if it is a certain waste. So there's a chart that we're going to probably post to the website so that when people do write in, they can help us out, right? Let us know what you think you're
We don't have to
smelling.
utilize Facebook anymore for that.
Well, there is a complaint email address, and they'll be using that
Great.
moving forward.
You got a question behind you.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
Amanda, is there any problems for the 4 people who were selected that could smell it as far as their help that comes back, like for fumes for the firemen?
Oh,
They're
sure,
doing
sure.
that right now nationally.
Yep.
Is there anything that,
Right. So everything that we've monitored for at the landfill, because we did during the early parts of this odor,
right,
the odor complaints that were coming in, we did do some testing at the landfill, collecting air samples to look for VOCs and SVOCs and things that could be hazardous.
right,
We didn't find anything at the landfill.
okay.
So to me, that's a clear indication we're not going to find those things in the neighborhood either. And then we did do.
Before to get sick.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely, right. Everything that we've seen is that the odors are not from things that would be, hazardous to your
Okay.
to your health.
Gotcha.
So once this plan is submitted to DEP, is this something that has to continue or can it be stopped at any time?
So
Town sees
this,
fit.
this will become part of their operations manual, and it is a condition of the permit. So they will need to maintain some form of odor monitoring. And the way that the condition is written, it allows them to update it if something better comes along in the future. So they can be retrained in a new method. If there's, it will depend on what's going on. We're responding to complaints. If complaints decrease, then the number of responses are going to decrease, right?
But what we're asking is so right now, let's say we approved it, you started new landfill,
Mhm.
you get a complaint today
Sure.
because it's now been approved.
Right.
After it's approved, I guess, let me back up. Hasn't been approved yet, we're doing it. After it gets approved, can they stop it or do they have to continue?
They have to continue with the monitoring. And really the reason for that is that wastes change over
There's gonna
time.
be people that ask that question.
Oh,
that's a great
absolutely,
question.
absolutely.
Great.
And waste change over time, and Chris knows that. So you may get in a waste today that has no odor. You can get that same waste tomorrow, and it might have been sitting in a dumpster overnight, or it may, and that
I know.
may have an odor. So it's really hard to say waste here is never going to smell. Waste has an odor, period, right? So we will expect as you're moving forward that there may be a waste stream that comes in on a certain day that has an odor that we want to make sure we can address. And by doing this, the responders can go out, figure out if it is a concern in the neighborhood, and then trace it back and find the source and address it at the source. And that's really the plan. We don't ever expect that there's never going to be odor at a solid waste facility. And I stand on it all the time, and Chris and I are out there together. Sometimes I smell it, sometimes I don't. It really depends on what wastes have come out that day and things like that. So, but it is waste. The goal is to keep the odor on the site, not to have it in the neighborhood. But this allows us to respond if it is found in the neighborhood. So. All right, so this is the base plan, and hopefully you can sort of see that for phase 4. You can, if you take a look at it, the stuff on the left-hand side of the screen, that there's a lot of lines that come together. That's the current area. There's a dotted black line, kind of almost center, that outlines the area. If you've been out to the landfill, has intermediate cover on it now, that black area between the grassy fields and the landfill. That's that kind of boot-shaped area there. And then everything.
So you're talking this line here?
Nope, even further over. It kind of looks like a dog leg. Keep going.
Oh,
Right there.
Okay,
Yep.
all right.
Yeah. So that area has intermediate cover on it. Actually, I can do this. Did you see my mop? Nope, you can't. Okay. Everything to the right-hand side of that, or to the east of the site, if you're out on the site, that is the new, right? That is the new area for capacity. That's already been permitted. So at this point, we're just going to need to ask DEP for permission based on the design. We just have to show them design.
So we say expand the landfill, we're not expanding it above the cells that were already approved.
Correct.
Right, right. This entire area was approved for landfill in 1986.
Yep.
But every permit that comes out of DEP
So
for new capacity.
From this
requires-
line over is what we already use, correct?
Absolutely, is what you already use. And if you see even further than that is the old closed landfill.
That's the old one that didn't have the
Everything,
liner under.
right, everything that has grass on it now
Right.
is the closed attenuation, right?
Okay.
While you're right there, Tom,
Yes,
just
sir.
point out Crosby Street, Martin Street, way up top, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
It's
you
up to the
can't
north.
see it from here.
Yeah, right up there.
It's got you're in a, yeah.
Right where all the, right where all the writing is. Yes,
Yep.
yeah, yes, right where all that writing
Well, it's
is.
actually further north than
Yeah,
that,
it's a
but yes,
little
it's
bit
on that
further.
side.
That's the road to
That's
the
the access road.
landfill.
Oh, okay, so it'd be up above there.
Oh,
What
yeah.
where that solid line is going up there?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what Chris was talking about earlier when he was talking about a scale, so you can see how those two arms of the road come together in a
Yeah.
Y. You follow that out,
Right.
right, the scale would be out further.
Where the old corn crib was.
Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere in that area, if we can come to a reasonable solution.
And that would allow you, regardless of which Y you come into to access the landfill, to be weighed before. Yep, so that's the goal. So you can see the baseline to this landfill kind of looks like a TP. That's the grading. So that line that runs north to south is the lowest spot on that Y. Everything will drain to that area. And then all of those heavy dotted lines and everything that runs along it, those are all new leachate collection lines that will go in. As we've pointed out, some of the issues we had in the past with stability were due to drainage. We've put drainage everywhere at the bottom of this landfill. So it will help no matter where water falls, it's going to shed to the sides and get into that leachate collection system. And then it does come across and tie into the existing lines and into the pump station. So there's actually 2 levels to this. This is what you would see above the primary liner system, which is where the waste is put. There's another layer of that underneath that's leak detection that has the same types of piping in case anything gets through that first layer, gets picked up in the second layer, and allows Chris to respond before it gets out into the environment.
So I have a question.
Yes.
It's actually a couple multiple questions.
Yep.
So the new parts on the right. What is
Parts
the,
on the right.
you said at 60%, Chris? Well, 56% you figured, correct?
With the
50%.
shredder.
Yeah,
Okay.
compaction, yes.
Okay, so how long will it take to fill that?
20 years.
So,
20 years.
and how much money are you gonna make off that?
It's coming.
We're coming.
Okay, because the loan's for 30 years.
Yeah, it's coming. He's got that all worked out for you. He gets to do that part. I do the technical part.
There's
no way it lasts 20 years.
So this is what I was talking about. This is the liner system buildup.
Yep.
So from the bottom, you can see the native ground, and then there'll be 12 inches of barrier soil or clay in this case. And then above that is a geosynthetic clay layer. So it's a layer, basically 2 layers of felt with some bentonite clay in the center that swells up if it gets wet. Just above that is a 60 mil geomembrane, and then a double-sided geocomposite and another 60 mil geomembrane. So that double-sided geocomposite will carry any leakage that gets in there over into the leak detection system. They'll have a monitor on it so they can see if it's hit there, they can respond immediately, and it keeps it above anything that's going to get into the groundwater. That's the whole point of these systems. And then above that, you have another double-sided geocomposite and sand that's going to carry the leachate out into those pipes and then out into the pump station and out to the treatment plant. So this is what the final build out will look like. So this, you can see the grades tie right back into the old attenuation landfill. So it will look like one mound when it's completely done. So closure plan procedures. Similar to new liner construction, we can't submit today to the DEP a set of plans for closure that's going to happen in 20 years. What the regulations require is that once we are a year out from being at final grade, that we submit additional plans to the department that meet the requirements of the rules at that time. So if they make rule changes that improve that, we'll need to meet them. And that's why today a cover system on that landfill is so different from what you put on the attenuation landfill. Rules change over time. The town will submit that formal application with the closure design 1 year prior to reaching the final build out, and then it must meet those requirements. And as we talked about, it's about 20 years of capacity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Again, that depends on, but if you, once we get to the point where he talks about using capacity, you'll see
Got a
that.
question behind you.
Yes, dear. How many landfills are in the state of Maine, and where do we stand as far as ours? Is ours like in the middle, top of the line, like solar farms? Okay.
Okay, so size or
Yeah.
design?
How many in the state?
So there are, and I'm going to estimate because
Just
I
roughly.
can't remember. Yeah, exactly. I want to say there are only 4 or 5 additional municipal landfills in the state.
Really?
There are not many.
No.
We have 1 large state-owned landfill that's in Old Town.
Right, yeah.
We have 1 commercial landfill that's a large facility in Norridgewock.
Mhm. Okay.
And then there are other facilities owned by industries. So paper mills have landfills. I think there are 5 or 6 of those remaining. And then there are some very small construction and demolition debris landfills in northern Maine.
Mhm.
And that's strictly because there's no processing of CDD in northern Maine. So they still dispose of it.
So is Hartland one of the few towns?
You are. Yeah, you are one of the
That's
few
what I was wondering.
municipalities.
Okay,
Yep.
in case somebody asked you. Okay.
Yeah, and you actually, because of how your landfill started as an industrial facility, the waste streams that you take at your facility are different
Mhm.
than the wastes that are accepted at most municipal landfills.
Different how?
You don't take MSW, for example. Most municipal landfills were built to handle the trash that you take to your transfer station. That goes to their facility. Yours was not. And moving forward, I would not recommend that you go that route. because with MSW comes rodents and birds and odors and gases. And so the waste that you guys have proposed for this site is actually some of the more stable, less reactive materials. CDD does not break down very much over time. It doesn't decompose. I mean, you've seen that, houses stand
But
forever.
also our landfill can take some of the extremes that others can't.
Yours is licensed to take some,
Asbestos,
yes,
Stuff like that.
all with certain placement criteria.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So the closure design will include the cover system components and all, so that again, all the soils and geosynthetics, very similar to the liner. Gas management design, stormwater modeling and design. So currently everything that falls in your landfill, you capture and treat as leachate. When you close it, all of that is now clean water, has to be shed. So we'll have to then look at how that stormwater is managed. It's minor in the scope of all things, but that will be addressed in there. And then any additional requirements that DEP has in place in 20 years. So if they've got new monitoring requirements, you'll have to adjust those. And then the closure application will also include the post-closure monitoring and maintenance plan, and that will outline the town's continued responsibility for the site after closure. Current solid waste regulations require a minimum of 30 years of post-closure monitoring and maintenance. So if you closed that landfill today, you're monitoring it for 30 more years at a minimum. They can roll that if they want to. And we're seeing that some of the monitoring we're doing now out there is actually monitoring the attenuation landfill, which was closed 30 years ago. So, you know, DEP looks at that, looks at what's going on the site, makes those determinations, but you're looking at a minimum of 30 years. So those post-closure monitoring are that you need to perform environmental monitoring, so groundwater, surface water, landfill gas, and air for a minimum of 30. The town will be required to mow the closed landfill at least once a year. That's to limit woody tree growth. You don't want anything penetrating the liner system. The town will be required to perform an inspection of the landfill cover system on an annual basis, and that inspection must be conducted by a qualified individual. And then the town must submit all the annual reports to the DEP in April of each year. So that includes an analysis of all the groundwater monitoring data, and everything has to be compiled and then submitted annually. You're doing it currently as part of your operations. That continues into post-closure. And then the estimated cost for closure of the currently constructed, so where we're operating today, is 1.5 million. And that includes the design, the materials, and the construction oversight of 3.8 acres. The estimated cost for closure of the landfill at the completion of phase 4, so that entire build out that I showed you, which would not happen for 20 years, is 3.5 million. And that includes, again, the design, the materials, and construction oversight. The estimated cost of the post-closure, now that's the same, no matter which time you close, is 1.7 million. And so that's where that initial number that Chris mentioned earlier for immediate closure is 1.5 plus 1.7. And that includes all the required monitoring, maintenance, and leachate costs. And that will initiate immediately at closure.
So the 1.5 and the 1.7 is the 3.469?
Roughly, yeah.
Yes.
Roughly.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's where that number comes from. That 1.7 carries forward, however, with phase 4 as well, because you'll have that going forward. It's up to you now, Chris.
Okay, so where do we go from here? All right. Our goal is to optimize the capacity for phase 4. And as we're moving forward through this presentation, I think you'll see that we have a great plan to do that. We need the town's support to move forward, and we're hopeful that that's going to happen. Our first assumption is that our annual landfill operating budget will be right around 1.1 million, and the projection for the construction of 5.3 acres is 2,807,000 for the landfill liner. If we just look at the net capacity of the creation of the developed area, it's 328,000 cubic yards. So that is the net volume that we're going to create. And I'll show you the powers of the numbers as we move forward here. Again, if we manage this capacity, and Tim said it may not last that long, it's a variable, it's goes up and down.
But for this purpose, it doesn't really matter how long it lasts.
A cubic is the same.
Yards is the
Right.
same.
Right.
So it doesn't matter if it lasts 10 years or 20 years.
Right,
We're still getting the same amount of money.
Right,
Yes.
then your operating costs. go
Right,
down this
right.
fast.
that's a good point, good point. And again, we're estimating to do 25,000 cubic yards a year. That gets you out to 20 years. We will be looking to build reserves for 3,520,000 for closure. And we'll also be looking to do the 1.7 million for post-closure. Okay, we've touched on this just a little bit, but the 3,532,000 that we're asking to borrow buys us a state-of-the-art liner system. It's going to be 2,807,000, a slow-speed shredder, which is around 600,000, and a set of scales that's around 125,000. Currently, since the tannery left, okay, we had to jump into the budget for the treatment plant, okay? The budgeted treatment plant used to be right around $1 million. So our infrastructure at the treatment plant is the same infrastructure that, or similar in capacity as an Orono, a Saco, a Biddeford. We have a very large facility, okay? So because we lost 94% of our volume, doesn't mean we can cut the budget 94%. We've really worked on the numbers. We put a great deal of effort into this, and we're rough figures. We're talking about a $600,000 budget. Okay, the town's folks that pay sewer bills contribute around 170,000. That's 176,000. Okay, we get other monies that we get from septage. We also are looking at, because it's a cost that we're going to have to bear, the leachate always ran through the tannery. It does not anymore. Now we have to pay for the cost of the leachate, okay? The reason they were willing to pay for the cost of the leachate is because it diluted their operation, so the pollution levels were less, okay? And a lot of people don't get that, but they really, they were happy to let that flow go through there, okay? The flow from the leachate is around 10 million gallons a year, okay? So we're figuring about 0.031 cents is going to be what we're at. That's where the 310,000 comes up, okay? So if you take the current revenue stream that we're getting at the treatment plant, we're short 310,000. So if we don't fill that 310,000, either we got to do it through taxation or user fees. And we have 326 users, okay? So divide that into 310,000. That's going to give you a rough idea of how much your sewer bill would be if it didn't go to taxation, okay? So I just wanted to make that point. And again,
So
go ahead.
if we go through taxation, that means I can have my septic dumped there for free because I'm already paying it through the taxes, right?
Should be, yes.
I'm gonna remember you said that.
Right, well, think about,
5-gallon buckets?
think
No,
about,
sir, when they suck it out with the
Right.
truck, they haul it down there and dump it.
but for many, many years,
We
there
do get a
was,
discounted rate if they dump yours down there.
for many years, it was done through taxation.
Yes.
It was not done through a user system.
Right.
Okay, so again, number 9, our point is our goal is no additional taxation. That's what our plan is, we're promoting and trying to sell here. Okay, right now with the current machinery we have, we are operating at a 42% compaction rate. That gives us a on our landfill budget of 1.1 million, that means our operating costs are $35.68 per yard of product. For the phase 4 development costs, it gets us at $6.36. And our closing cost projections are at $6.40. Post-closure, $3.13, for a total cost of a yard at $51.57, okay? Now, this chart is simply here to show you, this is an annual waste projection, okay? The two numbers really the most important here. This is compaction rate is at 56%. It yields you a yardage price of $52.36. You look down at the bottom, our actual cost is $51.57. So if we can get to 56% compaction rate, we will beat our unit price and we should have leftover monies, okay? That doesn't mean that we're going to. Our real goal is to break even. That's our real goal. If we can break even, we win.
You can't anticipate breakdown machinery.
That's in his budget.
It's in my budget. Yeah, it's in my budget.
So do you have any questions on this slide? Because I know there's a lot up there before we move.
Yeah, there's a lot of data here.
So these are
So
just
it
current.
doesn't matter if
typicals.
the loan's for 30 years or 20 years, or if it stays open for 20 years because we're going by cubic yard.
Well, Tom, it's cubic yards and we can pay it off early. Just because we take a term, we certainly can pay it off in less time.
Penalties.
Well, no penalties, no, there won't be a penalty. I don't believe Dan would be a better one to ask, but I don't believe Maine can
Dan's still
do.
on there?
Yeah, I don't think you can do
That's-
penalties. Is that correct?
Rural development does not. If you borrowed through the bond bank, for instance, there might be a penalty, but
Okay,
a rural development loan would be prepayable without penalty. That's correct.
thank you.
Certainly.
Okay, this is a chart that gets exciting, and I'm going to stand up a minute. So I want you to understand this concept. We talked about 328,000 cubic yards of capacity, okay? This blue line represents 328,000 cubic yards of capacity.
Uncompacted. So just as it comes
Uncompacted.
out of the truck.
If we do nothing, that's what the value of the area is worth, if we do nothing, okay? You see at 42%, now we're adding, we're in the 28,000 range, 28 million. By getting at 42%, we're saying that value is worth 28 million.
And that's your current compaction rate.
Right.
That's what you get today.
If we get to 50% compaction, we're at 3,200,000. 32 million, excuse me. I gotta get
Almost 34.
I gotta get my decimal moved over a little more.
It's important to remember where those commas are,
Right, right.
because
Yes,
it's
big
pretty
money.
impressive.
Now, they're big numbers and I projected them at 56%. We were hitting 60, okay, in the field. So again, you're up over 40 million at 60%. There were times when we're hitting 70%. Now you're up here. So I don't think you worry about 70% compaction. Realistically, we want to be right here. We want to be in this area between that 30 and $40 million
That gives
range.
you leeway for error.
Right, right. So keep in mind, we want to borrow 3,500,000. We want the closure, the post-closure. There's quite a bit of money here, okay? Now, we're not inflating numbers. We're trying to be conservative. We really have a huge asset here that is underutilized. But this compaction here, and we reference it in this presentation, this is managed. As you move up through here, this is managed capacity. This is unmanaged capacity, okay?
So you depend on the shredder solely for your compaction?
Nope.
What else is,
Our shredder is getting us from this point up between these two.
okay,
Okay, so spending 600,000 and using a machine that should last 7 to 10 years.
Okay.
You're gonna gain this much dollar volume.
So we're gonna have to buy 2 of those machines basically
No,
to last 20 years?
well, if we take care of it, maybe not.
Okay.
You know, it's gotta be, you gotta take care of it. It's
Piece of
just,
equipment,
just like
absolutely.
any, I mean, the last dozer, we still got a 1989 dump truck and we had a dozer for 30 years.
Almost as long.
Yeah, so it's about taking care of it, Tim.
Yeah.
But the other thing I wanted to point out, picture this blue area as a box, okay? If you do nothing and you fill that box, you fill this area. Now, start squeezing what you put in the box. Start squeezing, start squeezing. Now you're getting this volume in and this volume in. Take the money out of it.
Right, and it's still occupying the blue box.
It's still occupying the blue box.
Right.
That is how we make this asset pay. Okay? We've got to squeeze more material into it than it's able to take at a net value. Okay?
so that was my question. How, other than the shredder, how else do you plan on
The
squeezing that into that?
compactor. the
We have a
compactor and the
compactor.
dozer.
Okay, that answers my question. That's what I asked.
We have, I'm sorry, I missed that, Tom. We have a compactor that's paid for. We have an excavator that's paid for. We have a leased bulldozer that's a couple years old. I think we still owe around 75,000. Don't quote me on that. And then this shredder, the real selling point to me on the shredder was in the design process. Obviously, we have meetings and discuss what needs to happen. And Amanda pointed out to me, she said, you know, you're going to have 3 to 5 feet of soft material to line the base of this.
Right.
Okay. Well, I've been around construction my whole life, and I'm doing numbers in my head. We're gonna have, that's 45,000 cubic yards of capacity. I mean, of product. 45,000 cubic yards. Just throw $20 at it to place it. Now, that means you're buying the gravel and putting it in place with a machine. Can you do it for 20 bucks? I question it, okay?
So would I.
It's probably more like 25, but let's just use 20.
Mhm.
That's $900,000.
Right.
So we can do a new build and pay for that machine right on the first end of the construction.
I agree.
So that is the biggest advantage to that shredder.
Yeah.
Is
Well, I
creative.
was just curious on what other ways you was
Yep.
compacting.
Can I just give you a visual? So I was a little suspect about this shredder when you're gonna go spend like $600,000 or something. Before we ever think about that, I like to see what is a shredder. I looked on YouTube, I kind of get the concept. They had one on display. I came up there. There was a greater than twin mattress. Now think of a mattress. Normally, when that's been delivered to the landfill, we put that in a landfill. Not a real good thing to be able to
They
break
float,
down.
yeah.
Put it through a shredder, and there's no way that I can guarantee this is true, but when I walked over to the area, they shut, the last thing that this crew did until they stopped it was they put that mattress through. So we went over to try to figure out, I think I could put the contents of that mattress in a Shop and Save brown bag.
Oh, yeah.
You with me?
Yeah.
So then I'm starting to think, wow. So if we could take the future mattresses and other things like it and put it to now it compacts so well. And then that compactor thing, I'd never seen it work before. It's the big, you guys know what it is. That starts hammering stuff down. There's no question we're better off than what we were without those two.
Oh, definitely.
Impressive.
Yeah, I mean, you're taking
Yeah, you're not gonna
2
make
by
the money
4s
without
into
it.
6-inch pieces.
Right.
So,
Compaction, it's all about compaction. The whole concept and the whole principle is about compaction. You've got to compact.
much more stable.
Mm.
Okay, so let's talk a minute about the negative side if we shut down. Unfortunately, this is this is very important to discuss because it is real. And we often, it's been said publicly on more than one occasion that we're trying to scare you with taxes. That's not the case at all. These are real numbers that we're going to have to cover from tax.
But it does scare us.
Yeah, it should.
Right.
It should.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it does scare you, but it's not being made up.
Correct.
It's not being made up. These are real costs that are facing us if we shut down the landfill. So again, we talked about the shortfall on the HPCF budget of 310,000. Okay, that's going to be an annual thing. Frankly, the only thing we can cut down there is positions, and I'll be very honest with you. We have a very well-qualified staff, and I have talked at length with different consultants in the industry, and they said, you know, you got to be careful. You don't want to be any smaller than 3 people. That plant was designed to have 9 full-time people running it. There's 3 people down there. There's just so much infrastructure. So that's important to pay attention to. Could we make some changes there? We probably could, but it's going to come at a cost. So really, operationally, our infrastructure is so big, we are in the best position we're going to be in right at the moment because we have updated a bunch of stuff. We've been fortunate enough to have a $15 million funding package. A large portion of the treatment plant has been updated. We've got to continue and update it more. We will gain some more savings over time from an operational standpoint, such as heat, lights, things like that, but that's a minuscule amount of the budget. It is a very tiny part of the budget. So anyway, that's just something to keep in mind, that treatment plant's not going to go away. There's going to be a cost associated with it. If we shut down, we're going to have to take out sludge disposal, our own treatment plant sludge, excuse me, will have to go somewhere. We estimate that 20,000. Frankly, I think that's very light amount. I don't think it will quite cover us, but
Are we currently bringing sludge in from other?
we are.
Yes.
We are. Yep. We bring sludge in from other places. We bring compost in from other places. We get C&D in. We've got an ash product coming in, and let's see. Those are the main ones right at the moment. That's the main. Amanda, actually, can you back up a second? A couple of slides.
With all that, what is the projected percentage that our treatment plant is running at right now? Like, is it running at 50%? Is it running at 70%? Is it running at 100%?
That's a great question. I honestly don't know the answer. It's got to be. You're talking about the volume of product going through our facility based on what it's capable of.
Correct.
I'm going to bet it's 20. Well, 20 would be.
Technically, it should be 6.
95%.
Right, you lost
Right.
94%, so it should be at
Right.
6. Well, yeah, but if they're bringing stuff in, I'm saying, with the stuff you're bringing in, that stuff doesn't go through the treatment
Right,
plant.
but remember your leachate's
No, that's
still
what I
there.
asked. Are you bringing stuff into the treatment plant?
Oh, I'm sorry. We do if there's an opportunity to. Okay, so last summer.
I know we're bringing stuff into the treatment, into the.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I misunderstood you. I thought you meant at the
No,
landfill. The treatment plant, we do have an opportunity from time to time to bring liquids in. And that is something that we've been talking about. We take septage, okay? Obviously, the septage ends up causing more pressing, which makes more sludge. However, it creates a revenue stream. So we have a semi-plan amongst us from the treatment plant crew of trying to do a little marketing and get out there in front of folks on the septage side of things. We need to get started on that very, very aggressively very soon because the summer season's coming. And but last year we took in around 79,000 on septage and different product coming in. It typically runs between 20 and 40. It's usually not quite that aggressive. We've projected 40. We know we got to go for 40. that 310,000 still leaves us 40,000 we've got to go after in another area. And again, we need to do that, so I don't want to project it into this price. We got to leave a goal. We've got to go out there and see if we can find some revenue. So that's a great question. Yeah, go ahead and move forward. I misunderstood. So, okay. So the 310,000 is the shortfall in HPCF. We talked about the sludge. Landfill closure, the financing, $60,382 a year. Post-closure costs. We probably would put this in a budget. We probably wouldn't borrow for it. So, but it's averaging out about $78,000 a year. The remaining, we have a landfill loan that lasts 20 years approximately. It might be 19 at this point, but we're paying on that around $11,000. So that's the debt service that we have there. The debt service for the treatment plant that is a part of the funding package that we got down there is in the 310,000. So this is also covering costs. That's a part of that budget. That's about 100 and it's right around 100,000, give or take a little bit annually. That payment. So again, you get to a total. You got $479,000 total in the town of Hartland right at the moment. Our mill rate is approximately $124,000 per mill. When you divide that into the total cost, you're looking at 3.87 mills. Our current mill rate is 22.2, and our projected mill rate without phase 4 would be $26.07. Okay, so you're talking a huge increase. If you got a $100,000 house, it's significant. If you got a $500,000 house in Hartland, it's huge. And we have several. We have a group of houses that run that 300,000 to 500,000 range. So this is a huge impact to
Hey, mine, don't look at
All set.
Time to sell.
Yep, I think we're all set. Okay, in closing here, again, we're just reiterating here that a vote to close down immediately is a guarantees us taxation. Again, that figure is $3,469,809. A vote in favor of borrowing $3,533,000. You keep hearing the same theme over and over because my recommendation, and obviously the selectmen's recommendation, is to move forward here. The $3,533,000 buys us the capacity, it buys us a shredder, buys us a set of truck scales. It gives us the opportunity to provide diligent management of the landfill capacity that will be required to cover all of these costs, the operations costs, the future closure and post-closure. It minimizes the potential for future taxation. I would never stand up and say there will never be any taxation because we can't be that bold, but it will minimize it. And again, especially
Much higher.
in the immediate years, it would be paid for 100% through the user fees. So.
Is there any potential of making money on this after all that is done?
I think there is potential, Tom. I do think there's potential, but we don't, I wouldn't want to sit there and project that today. I would rather operate it with the tools that we have and provide analysis on that in the future. It's really a projection that we're providing today has been done conservatively. It's been done with a significant amount of due diligence, but to sit here and say you're going to make money, I'm not sure that I would be that bold. However, remember, we want to break even. If we can minimize taxation over time and we put money into a savings account and we get $2 million for post-closure and we get the the closure money and all of those pots of money that we need, we win. And really, that should be our focus and our goal. If there's extra, obviously, that gives us an opportunity to minimize taxes, or not minimize, I should say, possibly reduce taxes in town, or increase services. There'll be a reward somewhere if we're fortunate enough to do that. But I wouldn't want to sit here and say, yes, we're going to make all kinds of money.
Oh, I know you're not gonna make all kinds. I'm
Yeah.
just curious if there was a.
So what are we charging per cubic yard right now?
Well, that's a good question.
I know. That's why I asked.
That depends on what your product is, okay? So,
Does it say somewhere?
Tipping fee.
tipping fee,
Gotcha.
yeah,
I missed that, sorry.
So the standard tipping fee is calculated on a price per ton, and then Chris converts that to a price per yard based on the density of the
So
material
is
that
that
comes in.
price?
So that is based on his current tipping fees per
Yes.
yard. Yep.
Okay, so what is Norwalk charging per yard
we're super close.
right now?
Yep,
So now we're talking about increasing that to $52?
no, that's where
What was the
We're not-
$51.16?
right, so this is where it gets a little tricky.
Okay.
It's all about the compaction. It inflates the number. I gotta show you the math to get you there. So this, if you,
Well, no, so say you take in construction demolition debris, right?
right,
Yeah.
$21.02 a yard as
Okay.
it falls out of the truck.
Right.
That same yard, once you've compacted it, is $42 if you can get 50% compaction.
right,
So
Right.
that's where.
That's how the number
where you
comes in.
get that number.
Okay,
right. So that's,
so we're not technically increasing our rate.
no, not necessarily. We're not gonna,
If we're gonna increase our rate in Norwalk or the other,
Right.
we're gonna lose business.
Right, the goal is to stay just under Norwalk.
right,
Absolutely,
Really, you
absolutely.
stay right under
So I'm
that.
pretty
that-
thick and this took me a while. But the issue is at the current procedures and processes that they're doing at our landfill, we're hitting that goal.
Right.
You with me? Because I couldn't understand why are we're gonna project to raise the fees? Now we were gonna lose the people who are bringing the stuff to us.
Exactly what I was thinking.
But we're under, I'd say, current market prices.
Yep.
And when we increase our capability of compaction, this is where we win. Because we're already meeting what he has there. We've actually better than meet that.
Well, and if you think about it,
And I've
that's
been
why you,
skeptical about the whole thing.
right, but that's why you have 350,000+ in a reserve account.
Right.
And your budget's been covered, because he's been doing this for the
So
last
what are
2
you
years.
predicting on taking in the future?
well, that's what this projection is right here. This is just
No,
a,
I'm not talking money. I'm talking what types of material are you planning on taking in the future?
yep, it's right here.
Just that?
You got bio waste,
Yeah.
contaminated soil, construction demolition debris. Now, keep in mind, bio waste includes sludge, compost. There's a variety of stuff in bio waste,
Correct.
okay?
Yeah.
Contaminated soil, there's a
But
variety.
there's nothing on top of, nothing new, right?
Right, no, we still are looking at, occasionally we'll get auto fluff. We got a phone call today on a contaminated dredge product, correct?
Yeah.
It was, so it's contaminated dredging that they're digging near the water. That, we've got some in the past, not contaminated. It was just dredging material. Okay, so that we are licensed for special waste, and something that I would like to point out, because I think this is a misunderstanding out there in the public. We have not taken any asbestos in our landfill that didn't come directly here from town. It came out of buildings that we tore down, that we're trying to improve. None of it,
Getting truckloads of it coming in.
we do not get
That
truckloads of it.
That wasn't accurate.
We don't even ask for it. So we don't even ask for it because We have to dig a hole, we have to place it, we have to use a GPS to set the corners. So we haven't
Not
even,
counting all the stuff that you can wrap it in.
right, I think my price on the price sheet is, it's $144 a ton. That is more than
So
Juniper Ridge and Waste Management intentional.
you don't, you take in more construction and demo,
Mhm.
more than you do human waste.
Mhm.
Is,
Oh, yeah.
that's the other
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
misinformation
Yes.
that's out there in the community, is all you take in is other people's feces.
And I-
And so that is good to point out, I think, to
Right.
other people in the community,
So-
because so many people are saying it's just truckloads of crap coming in every day, and it's not. I learned something new now.
Right, so, and I think Chris would be wise not to say he's never gonna accept another type of waste out here,
Right.
because
Money's
if
good.
you do end up with somebody
I just
moving in
asked
next
what he
door.
had for plans.
Right, but that opens up to do, if you do have a new industry,
Right.
you have the ability
Right.
to go to them and say, we can help you.
Right.
Right, and it doesn't limit that, you have to go to DEP and go through all the channels and all of that, but it gives you another positive to being located in Hartland. We've got waste disposal 2 miles.
So is there, we're projecting this for approximately, I'll use your word, 20 years. Is there another projection for making this even bigger in the future?
No, the closing.
It requires, if we were going to try to do that, we'd have to do a process called, help me with the words, Amanda.
You would
The
need an expansion, so you would need,
Right. public benefit determination is what I'm trying to find. That's the word, public benefit determination. So we would have to go through a process with application, and there's a whole analysis, and
Right.
you want to speak to that a little
I
bit
mean,
about what goes on?
ultimately now the goal is to manage what you had thrust upon you, right?
Right.
You never chose this landfill, you got this landfill. So the goal now is to manage what you've got to get it to closure. If you were to decide to move forward in the future with an expansion, there's a whole lot of additional siting criteria you have to meet. So there's studies that need to be done out there. You have to find the appropriate property to put it on that piece of property. And then you do have to go before the DEP and say, for this reason, this reason, and this reason, we meet a public benefit.
So I guess my
Yeah, I
next,
mean,
that
your
brings me
goal
to
is
my
closure.
next question. What are we gonna do with our own sludge in 20 years?
Haul it off.
Not a problem.
I gotta haul it off.
Yeah,
So
well,
now the town.
hopefully,
So now the town incurs another expense.
$20,000 a year.
Or by that time, you look at whether you can
Right.
compost it or do something like that with it.
So one thing I didn't see in there is, what about just keeping the landfill for Heartland's use only?
That's what I'm saying. Would it benefit us?
you get $20,000. The budget's,
How long would it last? How long would it take to fill
well,
that
we're
cell?
only doing about 1,000 cubic yards a year. So what we have left,
It's about 300 years.
yeah, well, no, we got 22,000 cubic yards, 22,000 cubic yards, so 20 years, but you can't afford it. You're gonna pay that through taxation. Because,
I agree. I get what you're saying. I'm just trying to,
so the
So ultimately,
requirement,
other people know
spot.
that eventually, in approximately 20 years, we're gonna have to start paying to get rid of our own.
There's a sweet spot where the amount of material you bring in and you dispose of every year balances out your expenses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The faster you take that in, the less your operating costs go down, because you don't have 20 years of operation, right? So you can reduce that end a little bit to make a little bit more money if you wanted to do that.
Yeah.
But he's kind of hitting that sweet spot with the 20 years.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
can
I'm sure
manage
he
it with
is,
what
but I
you've
have
got
no
for
doubt that he is.
people, and you get your capacity that you need to get that $52 to break even.
So basically, this is the expansion for the closure.
Hey, Chris,
yes,
could you bring down the screen share? Because I think you've probably covered the detail that you need to, and now we just need to move towards discussion.
Yep.
Yeah, I gotta work early in the morning.
So what you haven't said, Chris, is what made sense to the town in 2019 before Tasman closed, and now in 2021 makes a whole lot of sense in light of the shortfalls you're seeing appear in your budgeted expenses for the town, given Tasman is gone. because you don't have that throughput in the wastewater treatment plant, and you don't have the revenue from Tasman coming into the wastewater treatment plant. So as you pointed out, you've got shortfalls that you're going to have to cover.
Yes.
What made sense in 2019 before Tasman's closure was that the landfill is an enterprise account. It is not yet the general fund of the town. And so it pays for itself. And what you're proposing is that you continue to have some source of municipal revenue after the landfill pays for itself, so you can offset some of the costs, particularly the gaps that have opened up since the closure of Tasman. So I think there's a double whammy effect that you need to bring into this information. One is, if you had to fund without generating revenue over 20 to 30 years of operation, big cost, that $3.5 million cost. Second, you'd also have to find some ability, and it's got to come either from taxes or user fees for the wastewater treatment plant, as you pointed out. So if you would mention why, in light of the closure of the Tasman mill, why what made sense in 2019 now makes more sense in 2021. Can you address that, please?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for your point, because it's a great point. The reality is this asset can create the revenue necessary to help us on the revenue streams that we've lost. And really the plan, although different, it was a great idea in 2019. It's still a great idea today, because we have an opportunity to cover some of these revenue losses that we've had. The other part of that is we also are keeping an entity open and available for future business. Some people say that's never going to happen in Hartland. I tend to be more optimistic. Andy Hamilton is involved in a lot of situations around the state. He's been involved in some of the mills, and he could speak to that a little bit, but they're trying to rejuvenate these mills. It may not happen tomorrow, but 3 years from now, if we can get a partner to come into this treatment plant and we have the opportunity to provide water treatment and landfill disposal, we have a nice opportunity.
Nobody thought SAS was going to reopen.
Right.
You know what I mean? You just don't know.
Yep.
Do we still have the capability of running the leachate through the tannery if somebody else was to buy it and use that building?
I'm sorry.
Sure. The leachate used to run from the leachate pond to the tannery, back to the treatment plant.
Yep.
Now it goes from leachate to treatment plant, correct? Through pipes instead of running through the tannery.
Yes.
Is the option of running that through the tannery and basically preaching it at the tannery like we used to still there if somebody else was to utilize those buildings and needed to?
If they wanted it back in there, absolutely. It's just a switching of pipes and you go back to another process. And again, they may not want to do that.
Correct.
That operation down there, you know, this building and that infrastructure is large. I mean, it's large. So but again, keeping that opportunity open is extremely important to the town of Hartland. And again, we've had, we have our challenges. We're still going to continue to have challenges as we move forward. However, we have an awesome group of folks that we work with the attorneys that we work with provide us great guidance. TRC provides us awesome guidance, and we have the tools to move forward and create a very positive situation. It doesn't have to be a negative situation. So I don't know if I answered your question, Andy, but I tried to hit on it.
Yep, no, I think that was fine, Chris. What I'd suggest is that for the benefit of the budget committee, we just placed before the budget committee what we placed before the Board of Selectmen at the last Board of Selectmen meeting, and that is we need your input on whether to recommend passage of the 2 warrant articles. And Chris and Amanda have provided you with lots of detail to inform. Because these municipal finance matters require input from the budget committee, the voters of the town of Hartland are accustomed to getting both the recommendation on passage from both the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee. And so we wanted to make sure that we informed your judgment and that you had the opportunity to ask your questions before you voted. But that's the matter that needs to be addressed so that we can conclude our business tonight.
Whoops.
What happened?
I don't know. I didn't touch the thing.
Can they still hear us?
I can still see him too.
Yeah, I can see them.
This good way?
What's that all
You're
about?
still on, Chris, so.
Yeah, Chris is on there.
Yeah, we can still hear you.
I can still hear.
So,
So, is there any other discussion from the budget committee members?
No, I think that was a great presentation. It really explained it well. I learned a lot more than I thought I was gonna.
I agree.
I mean, to me, we need to go ahead and make a motion that
As
we,
bad as it sounds, I mean, it was a great presentation, and obviously the whole thing to me anyway, makes sense. I could be wrong. Makes sense, but on the other foot, it's a do or die situation. My opinion.
For me, it just solidifies the fact that when we put the information out there in public in 2019 and the vote was so unanimous, the reason for this thing going on tonight and the addition is one of the reasons we're gonna earn money to close it, gonna earn money to run it.
And maybe
we're gonna
potentially earn money.
perhaps even, or at least stay even with taxation.
That right there is the biggest thing as far as this town's concerned. This town can't afford to raise the taxes on the townspeople anymore.
or the citizens.
My taxes are almost $4,800 a year. I don't know about you folks,
You don't live on the water.
and I do not live on the water.
no, you don't.
I think my taxes are high enough, so personally, I feel for the people in this town that have to suffer with that landfill and stuff, but I don't see an option. I don't either. I don't see any other option than what you have proposed.
And there's
Whether we want it
things in
or not.
place to protect the, with the odor complaints, the group that's gonna be, doing that. You got, the liners for protection, the safety, the ongoing monitoring, all of that is going to go in place. And it's gonna be monitored not only by Hartland, but by the DEP. So,
Paid for by the users.
bingo. So we're not protecting, Hartland is not making out or paying DEP to take over and give us a clean slate, okay? They don't care about Hartland, Maine. They just don't. So I think we need to go ahead and make a vote.
I agree. Motion been made, seconded, all in favor? All in favor.
Okay, now, Tim, my dad is on the line, so I'd like you to ask him to state his name.
Can you hear me? Elmer, can you hear me?
Yes,
Could you state your name and your address?
Elmer Littlefield,
Yeah,
968 Athens Road,
okay, and what would your vote be, sir?
Hartland. Yes, let's get on with this and just keep in mind, write that down.
What did he say? I didn't hear him. Keep in mind what?
I vote yes.
Yeah, but you said keep in mind what?
He's got a major delay.
We got
I mean, the pricing of all this stuff is not ever gonna go down.
Right.
Right.
We're gonna stay on top of it.
Okay, so Elmer's vote was
Good
yes,
presentation.
and everybody else?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Unanimous.
7, 8. Yes.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Very well done. Very informative.
Okay, I think we can do a motion to adjourn.
Yep,
So moved.
Second.
all in favor? All opposed?
I just want to make one comment. Thank you for all of your time tonight. But when it got down to us, when we were looking at it, the difference between borrowing to close and borrowing to keep is $63,121.
Correct.
One way, we're gonna be paying for 30 years taxation increase at least 3.87 mils. The other way, we got hope. Maybe we don't have to.
Exactly. So I say you're in a do or die situation.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you, everybody that was involved tonight, and thank you all for coming out. I appreciate the support. Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy and Dan.
Yeah.